The crank connecting rod mechanism is the core power transmission system of a single-cylinder diesel engine, responsible for converting the reciprocating motion of the piston into the rotary motion of the crankshaft, thereby generating power output. In this lesson, we will learn about the components and functions of the crank connecting rod mechanism. The internal parts of a single-cylinder diesel engine mainly consist of two major mechanisms and five major systems. The two major mechanisms include the crank connecting rod mechanism and the valve mechanism. The crank connecting rod mechanism can be divided into the block assembly, the piston connecting rod assembly, and the crankshaft flywheel assembly. The valve mechanism can be divided into the valve assembly and the valve transmission assembly. The five major systems include the starting system, the air intake and exhaust system, the diesel supply system, the cooling system, and the lubrication system. First, let's learn about the crank connecting rod mechanism of a single-cylinder diesel engine, the block assembly. The block assembly is the skeleton of the diesel engine, consisting of five parts: the cylinder head cover, cylinder head, cylinder gasket, cylinder block, and oil pan. The cylinder head, cylinder block, and piston form a closed system, converting the thermal energy produced by diesel combustion into mechanical energy for the rotation of the crankshaft and flywheel. Cylinder heads are generally cast from high-quality gray iron or alloyed cast iron, featuring machined intake and exhaust valve seats, valve guide holes, and injector mounting holes. Within the cylinder head, water jackets, intake and exhaust passages, and the combustion chamber are also cast. The main function of the cylinder gasket is to maintain the cylinder seal to prevent gas leakage, as well as to ensure that the coolant and oil flowing from the engine block to the cylinder head do not leak. Cylinder liners can be divided into metal asbestos liners and metal composite material liners. The cylinder block is also one of the important components of the diesel engine, on which parts such as the cylinder, piston connecting rod, and crankshaft flywheel are mounted. The primary function of the oil pan is to store engine oil and enclose the engine block or crankcase. Note that the drain plug of the oil pan is magnetized. Let's move on to the piston connecting rod assembly, which mainly consists of the piston part and the connecting rod part. The function of the piston connecting rod assembly is to transfer the power obtained during the combustion process to the crankshaft. The components of the piston connecting rod assembly include the following parts: piston, piston rings, piston pin circlip, connecting rod body, connecting rod bearing shells, connecting rod bearing cap, connecting rod bolts, and connecting rod nuts. The main function of the piston is to withstand the pressure of combustion gases and transfer this force through the piston pin to the connecting rod to drive the rotation of the crankshaft. Additionally, the top of the piston, along with the cylinder head and cylinder walls, forms the combustion chamber. The piston is one of the most harshly operating components in the engine. The forces acting on the piston include gas forces and reciprocating inertia forces. The top of the piston is in direct contact with high-temperature exhaust gases, hence its temperature is very high. Under the action of side pressure, the piston slides at high speed along the cylinder wall. Due to poor lubrication conditions, there is significant friction loss and severe wear. The main function of the compression ring is sealing and heat transfer, ensuring the seal between the piston and the cylinder wall to prevent combustible mixture and high-temperature exhaust gases from leaking into the crankcase, and transferring the heat received by the top of the piston to the cylinder wall to avoid overheating of the piston. The primary function of the oil ring is to scrape off excess oil splashed onto the cylinder wall and to apply a uniform layer of oil film on the cylinder wall. The piston rings operate under high temperature and high pressure gases in the cylinder and slide at high speed within the cylinder under poor lubrication conditions. The piston pin is used to connect the piston and the connecting rod, and to transmit the force borne by the piston to the connecting rod. The function of the connecting rod assembly is to transmit the force borne by the piston to the crankshaft and convert the reciprocating motion of the piston into the rotational motion of the crankshaft. The connecting rod assembly includes parts such as the connecting rod body, connecting rod cap, connecting rod bolts, and connecting rod bearings. It is customary to refer to the combination of the connecting rod body, connecting rod cap, and connecting rod bolts as simply the connecting rod, and sometimes the connecting rod body itself is referred to as the connecting rod. The connecting rod consists of a small end, shank, and big end. Next, let's understand the crankshaft flywheel assembly of the single-cylinder diesel engine's crank connecting rod mechanism. The crankshaft flywheel assembly consists of the crankshaft part and the flywheel part. The function of the crankshaft flywheel assembly is to convert the gas force transmitted by the piston and connecting rod into torque, which is used to output power externally and drive the valve mechanism and other auxiliary devices of the diesel engine. The crankshaft flywheel assembly is composed of the crankshaft, flywheel, and various parts mounted on the crankshaft, such as timing gears, main bearing shells, crankshaft covers, and crankshaft oil seals. There are also balance weights on the crankshaft. The flywheel is a disc-shaped component with a large rotational inertia, acting as an energy storage device. The flywheel has marking lines for top dead center and fuel advance angle scales, and for electric start diesel engines, there is also a ring gear on the flywheel. During the operation of a diesel engine, the crank connecting rod mechanism is subjected to tremendous alternating loads and high temperature environments, which can easily lead to wear and deformation. When parts of the crank connecting rod mechanism, such as the connecting rod, crankshaft, etc., undergo excessive wear or deformation, it may cause the engine to run unstably, power to decrease, fuel consumption to increase, and even trigger serious mechanical failures. Therefore, understanding and mastering the structure and working principle of the crank connecting rod mechanism is crucial for ensuring the normal operation and extending the service life of the diesel engine. Please think about this: how does the flywheel store energy? This concludes today's lesson. Thank you.